Hey everybody, welcome back to another Puremix stay-at-home live stream. It's Tuesday, which means it's Between Two Beards with Vance Powell and Reid Shippen. And today they have a special guest that they're going to bring up in a little bit. That's Josh Thomas from Rupert Neve Designs. So without further ado, take it away, guys. Have fun.
All right. Hey fellas,
Thanks,
how's
Mark.
everybody? Hey fellas, but that's hey fellas, you guys.
Hey, fucker.
Hey fucker.
Cheers.
Yeah, cheers. What are you drinking today?
Same old scotch. Scotch.
Scotch. Well, I've got the I'm back to the Greenbrier, Tennessee whiskey here. This is a Nashville thing. It's actually pretty nice. It's about 90 proof. So I'll be nursing that. I actually have to work. I just dropped my drink a little bit. I actually have to work. I'm actually printing mixes back here. I'm printing a mix back here in the background. It's pretty awesome too. Let's just can I give it? Do you mind if I give a little taste?
Yeah, give a taste.
Know what it is? I don't know what song we're in. Oh, I know I do. Hold on, here we go. Yeah, well, there's only about one person in the world that could possibly be. And it's actually three persons. That's actually the Stray Cats. So I'm mixing that back in the background there. So it's pretty cool.
Nice.
Yeah. Anything new on your horizon this week? Young Reid?
No, just about to jump into a couple of projects. Obviously not today because we got this, and then I do another online class for the state school. But
we should talk about that at some point too.
yeah, we should totally talk about that. But Between Two Beers, I like that. Maybe we'll do that one week. Is Between Two
I'm down with that. You know what? Between Two Beers is a good idea because over the course of the last few weeks, not last week, because I actually was on the clock. I really had to work. I do too now, but I'm just printing a mix for an hour and 25 minutes. But last week I was working, and so I really didn't have a drink. But the week before, I had that Davison Reserve, that 125 proof thing. I was kind of shit faced.
A little hurting.
Yeah, I kind of went home after that. So, well, this week's been an interesting week for me. I had a backup system disaster a couple weeks ago, and I'm not going to run him down and give me shit, but I had about a 4-year-old Drobo 5N that just decided to stop working, and that's bad because it had eight terabyte drives in it.
That's a lot of terabytes.
And now all that's backed up. I have a tape backup system. And, some point if people want to ask questions, which, when we get into backups, we can talk about all that. But I decided to replace it with a Synology box. And I know you have a Synology box.
I do.
Now, how big is yours?
It's about this tall and about that long.
How many drives?
I have no idea. The nice thing about the Synology is when you need more room, you just stuff another drive into it.
Right.
But now that you ask, I'll look. It doesn't want to tell me. Keep talking.
Yeah. Look, go to Storage Manager. But what's been interesting about it is getting it through my firewall here at the network, at the studio. And I actually bought two of them. I bought one for my house. And so I have a folder, a shared folder that can pop up on my desktop, and I can just drop it in, and then it'll copy to my house, which is pretty cool, and vice versa. So at the house, I could open a session, work on it at the house, and it'll update back here. They'll run versioning on each other.
Is that internal to the Synology?
Yeah. Yeah, it's Synology. It's Synology Drive server, but you have to have two of them. But if you have that, I have one in my house. Basically, it's backing up my wife's business. She's a bookkeeper, and then it backs up my laptop. Whenever I come home and open my laptop, it finds it and backs it up, and then runs the sync server. And It's been pretty good. It's been a big time learning curve, and I've been mixing all in the middle of it while trying to make sure that I have all this data that's backed up and safely backed up, in 3 places. And so it's been an interesting learning curve.
And it bears mentioning, because I just had another friend go through this and lose some stuff. If it's not backed up 3 times, it's not backed up.
If you have 1 copy of it, you don't have a copy of it. If you have 2, you have a copy. You're going to have to pay somebody. You're renting this basically. And if you have 3, you're going to have to borrow it from somebody usually. And that's a good thing. But it's the renting it is a bad deal. I've luckily only once had a bad drive issue, and it was a typical scene that I'm sure Reid has been in the spot where you've had somebody's project on a drive in your system for 2 years. No one's ever asked for it, even though you've backed it up already. Even though you've already given them a copy of it, they call you and like, hey, I need a copy. And you're like, yeah, well, I don't have it anymore. And basically what happened with me was I mixed a record for a band. And then 2 years later, I mixed another record for the band. And I gave them copies, 2 hard drives. I handed it to the guitar player and the singer. 2 years later, long after, about a year, I keep it on my world back there. And about a year or so after it was long gone, I got a call, and basically the guitar player the singer had backed up his MacBook over the top of it. And the guitar player had accidentally erased it because he didn't know exactly what it was, then tried to get it back. And of course it was gone. So basically there is a record by a band, a Nashville band, well-known Nashville band. And their second record is as mixed, gone. It is just gone because they didn't take care of it. And of course they blamed me. So there you go.
I was doing a mix one time, and the producer came over with a hard drive, and I know yes, you do. And my assistant ran over and grabbed it, and he was running into the machine room to plug it into the Pro Tools system because he's rocking
on it.
And he stumbled and dropped the drive, and the drive, took a shock and it wouldn't mount. And the producer turned white, and we were like, "Oh man, I'm really sorry about that. You want to grab another copy?" He's like, "That was the only copy."
Yep.
And then, as it turns out, it wasn't only the only copy of that record. It was the only copy of that and 2 other records that the guy was working on. At some point, he actually threatened to sue me.
Yep.
Because my assistant dropped the hard drive.
Yep.
And then I had to explain to him in no uncertain terms that people who don't back up 3 projects that they're working on are fucking idiots.
Yep. Did it have to go to Drive Savers?
It did. And I think they actually ended up bringing it back, but that was 2 weeks and $6,000 later or whatever.
Yeah, that's really expensive.
Yeah. You can't fix stupid. Don't drink bleach.
Yeah.
Back up 3 times. Don't drink bleach. Back up 3 times. Yeah. That's our lesson for today.
Yes, absolutely. Well, it's interesting too, because I've been looking into the whole cloud-based, backup. And the problem is that, when my Drobo went down, I basically had 36 terabytes of data on the Drobo that hadn't cycled out. My backup script, I have a retrospect tape script that goes to an LTO6, and my LTO6 is at 100. That backup group is 60 3-terabyte tapes. So think about how much data that is, and that's from October of 2017. I had a big long running backup running.
I finally gave up on tape drives a couple of years ago. So I wanted to ask you, what do you use for the Synology stuff to back up your main mix? Are you mixing off the Synology, or are you mixing off a mix drive and backing up to Synology?
All right. So my whole thing is on this computer, which is
the mix room.
that right there. Yep. On that one, I have 4 2 terabyte SSDs connected to it. So they're split up into pairs. So it's like drive 1, drive 2, drive 3, drive 4, drive 5, drive 6, and 7, which is a big one. And those are connected via Thunderbolt. They're back there somewhere, behind somewhere.
Right.
So that's what I work off of. I have Carbon Copy Cloner scripts, which is probably one of the greatest pieces of software ever made by anybody. Bombitch.com. Let me type that in. Bombitch.com. I think that's right. And it's super cheap. It'll run for free. It'll annoy you, but it's great because it runs it does copy, smart copy. It does a verification pass. It'll allow you to script it. You can set up schedules. It will privately attach remote drives. It'll do all kinds of cool shit.
Yep.
And it was written by a guy that worked at Apple. And basically he wrote it for Apple to save drives when they're working on OS updates. And Apple just said, hey, you should sell this. It's pretty great, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah, and you know what? It's been a great program for a long time, and dude is awesome. So if you use it, just go ahead and pay him. Like
$39. It's $39.
Awesome. It's nothing.
So I have that, and basically I have my old cheese grater Mac Pro sits back there way in another room somewhere, and in it are a bunch of 2 terabyte drives. They mirror my drives. So they're set up exactly the same. So every night, and sometimes during the day when we're tracking, I will run from here to that old Mac Pro. It's just an old 5.1. It's like the last generation cheese grater Mac Pro.
Right.
So it runs back there. Now that Mac Pro has a USB 3 card. That's for something else. And then it has a fiber channel card. That fiber channel card goes to a HP 24 tape LTO6 autoloader. Now that's a pretty serious fucking piece of machinery. And you put barcodes on the tapes, you put it in, you hit go, and it just runs and fills tapes. And that's kind of what it's actually doing. It's literally doing that right now, running backing up the new drive. So,
that is complicated.
It is. Now the crazy part is, so Carbon Copy Cloner copies from here to those drives, and then Carbon Copy Cloner also copies to the Synology. But on that machine, I have Retrospect, and Retrospect copies from that machine to the tapes.
Interesting.
So, then I have ARQ, which runs to a Glacier server for one of my clients. I archive all of his live stuff.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I do something similar to what you're doing. I have a mixed drive that I work off of. Carbon Copy Cloner pushes out into the Synology. However, I'm considering just working off the Synology because you can dump everything into RAM when you're mixing, right? Yeah. So it doesn't really stress the tape machine, and everything on the Synology is automatically mirrored. And then every night I use ARQ, which is also a great program that's very cheap and written by a really cool guy. And ARQ pushes all of my stuff into a Wasabi server in the cloud. So
what is that Wasabi? How much data do you have there? And
a lot.
How much does that cost you?
I did the math at one point about a year and a half ago, and it was cheaper to put it on Wasabi than it was to buy hard drives. So I figured, screw it, because it's accessible everywhere. It's backed up multiple times in the cloud. It's fully secure, and it all happens in the background. So I never have to worry about anything being backed up.
How much data? My Synology is 60 terabytes, I think, something like that. 50 terabytes. So now that being said, I can see a point in time where I will have 50 terabytes on that system. So that means I have 50 terabytes in cloud storage. And I can tell you right now, 50 terabytes of S3 is fucking expensive.
Yeah, Wasabi's cheaper than S3. By a long shot, actually. And I was using Glacier before on S3. But you know, I mean, it keeps going like this, right? So at some point, well, first of all, we all know tape is bustedable. You know, it can freak out. Also, I like the fact that Wasabi is not in my building.
Well, of course.
But you know, yeah, it is a lot. And I mean, I think at some point we got to draw the line. You know, I know that there are probably projects that I can't recall because they were done on a Pro Tools 7 or Pro Tools 10 with an old machine and blah, blah, blah. So,
well, I mean, I know that since October of 17 until a week ago, I had amassed 160 terabytes of data. So I don't really want to store all that elsewhere. It's almost a weird deal where I almost want to, like, you know, maybe buy another one of these Synology boxes and just put it in my house and just let it slowly sink, you know, over the course of the next year to my house, you know. So, and I have one there now, so it wouldn't be like a terrible amount to go into this.
No, that's a good idea, actually.
Either way, I mean, it's just, you know, it's a tough one. Hey man, should we get into a couple questions here?
Yeah. I was looking through a few of these. Some of these we're gonna definitely leave for Josh.
What's your karaoke song?
You know, my karaoke song is "Don't Stop Believin'," which is almost always a really bad idea 30 seconds after you start singing it, but after a couple of cocktails right before you start singing it, it seems like the best idea ever.
Yeah.
It never worked.
My karaoke song is to not do karaoke, but if I've had enough drinks, I will do a version of 16 Tons. I've been known to do 16 Tons.
Okay.
And I've also been known to do the Head 'em Up, Ride 'em Out part of Rawhide.
I mean, I think that's kind of mandatory.
I think so.
Yeah. Well, and thank you for whoever said "Drunk on a Plane" is their karaoke song. You probably heard me tell this story if you watched the Puremix thing about "Drunk on a Plane," but that song was a blast, and we all knew it was a hit, except for Dirks, who was like, "Man, I don't know if I want this song on the record," and Ross and I were both like, "You're an idiot. Like, you're a fucking idiot, and we're not going to have that." So we had a nice big argument right here on the couch in the control room. You know, we all stripped down and oiled up and hashed it out, and it ended up on the record and being one of his biggest hits, I think. So please sing karaoke with that whenever.
He was very wrong. I always love the story that Ben Swank from Third Man, who's one of Jack White's, you know, really close friends.
Yeah.
Of course, Third Man wasn't happening then or whatever, but the first time Jack played him Seven Nation Army and said, "This will be our single," and Ben was like, I hate this song. That no one is ever gonna ever. No, don't put
really.
This. Yeah, he was like, "No, don't. It's terrible."
Oh my God, that's awesome.
And so Jack, of course, likes to just, you know, rub that one in. So, you know, I mean, I wasn't exactly on the session, but I was around when Honky Tonk Badonkadonk was going down at Blackbird.
Oh, wow.
And he was just like, "I don't want to fucking ever sing this song again. It's the stupidest fucking song ever." You know, and now he's got to sing it for the rest of his life.
He does, but he also gets to count the bank balance for the rest of his life. So I'm sure that kind of evens it out. Somebody had a question that says, "Do you guys have a system for organizing different versions of mixes?" And I actually have my delivery folder right here. So let's pick whoever top of the list. Cadillac 3. We have a folder that's got, sorry, where is it? Right here. We've got a folder that has the mix sessions, any documentation, a folder that has all of the stems, a folder that has consolidated multi-tracks, and a folder that has mix exports, which, you know, we call parts, you know, TV, instrumental, acapella, vocal up, stuff like that. So that's how I organize all that. What about you?
Well, what I do is I put all of those pieces in a folder that has the mix number, the mix date, and the mix number and mix date, and what the mix is on every file. So if it's a master, this is the master. If it's a version of vocal up or vocal down, it has the vocal up amount, vocal down amount, and the mix number and the day. So so that is and then I make 3 folders. I make a 2 master folder, or oftentimes it says high res for mastering, right. That folder. There'll be one that says CD quality, not for duplication, exclamation point, sometimes no exclamation point. And that'll be the heated mixes, which is just an elevated level mix, because I will do an elevated level mix just on the side. Simple setting, set a L2 at -7 and done.
Yep.
Okay. Just to get it up to, sort of faux master the thing.
Right.
Because I like to leave a lot of room for the mastering guy. I like to let him be able to do, have a job. You know what I mean? And then there'll be MP3s of those heated mixes. Now, if there's stems will be another folder. And then that folder will have the stem. And what I'll do is each stem will be numbered first, as in the order it is. So it'll say like 01 _ drums, mix 1, kick or whatever, mix 1. But I don't put the date on it. It gets a little too long and crazy.
Yeah, the files have dates anyway.
Yeah, exactly. So, and of course I do the date backwards because I do the Massenburg thing. I do the year, month, day. So it sorts correctly. And then 2 would be the bass, or 3, or, whatever. So the number of stems, they'll be in a folder. So they're all from exactly the same spot to exactly the same spot. Every file is from the same spot to the same spot.
Including your print sessions, right? Including all of your mixes. Every mix is from
everything. The same from point A to point A. Every mix, every time. And it's just how it kind of has to be. And then what happens is those folders in the time of making the record, there's the mix folder in the session, and in that is the masters, the MP3s, the heated, the CDs, and then inside each one of those there's a DNU, and that DNU will usually say do not use previous mixes. So as we go through the process, if I do a mix and I do a mix revision and I reprint, we move the old file into that DNU because, obviously sometimes those mixes get used, so we don't throw them away. So they're there. Right. There's a full chain, and they all have the dates. They all have what they are. They all have everything. So that's kind of my plan for that.
That's a good plan. Yeah, you got to number every mix you do, even if it's a tiny little tweak. Even, we got into one song where it was like 20 or 22 mixes, and about half of them were editing one note, taking out a squeak on an acoustic. But anytime you change it and send it back out, you have to put a new mix number on it.
Yeah, you have to.
That is true. Because you'll never remember.
Who busted my nuts about it was Ciccarelli. He busted my nuts. I was mixing something for him, and we were at Blackbird. I was mixing Jeff the Brotherhood. He was in one room and I was in the other, and he just kind of busts in. He's like, I don't understand how this what the fuck is this? And I was like, what do you mean, what is it? He goes, it just says mix 1. What mix 1 what? What the fuck is it? What? He's like, you got to tell me what it is. I was like, okay.
It's the first mix, Joe.
Yeah, it's the first mix. He goes, but is it a master? Is it a version? And so then I sort of understood, okay, hold it. I see what you're saying. You just want me to tell you exactly what it is. And so that's basically what I've done. And I've had to do mixes where and for him and for other people, where it'll be, it'll have the title of the track first, right? So like there's a song on here called Crybaby. So it'd be Crybaby, mix 1, master, today's date. That's all that needs to be known. That's what it is, right? But I also put like let's say we want one with more guitar, so it'd be Crybaby, alt mix 1, more guitar, plus guitar plus 1 or whatever, and the today's date. And so whatever it is you're changing, whatever that alternate change is, explain it.
Yeah, no, that's a good idea. And you know what? Hey, somebody asked, Nick said, do you really need to back up 200 takes of the same vocal? Well, it's not the same vocal, it's 200 takes of the vocal. And the answer is yes, because the one time you don't back those up, they're going to want to ask you for the ones that you don't have. So, when in doubt, like, don't throw anything out.
There was a great story back in the early days of Pro Tools. A lot of people won't know this, but back when you used to not have drives in gigabytes, they'd just be in megabytes. You'd have you'd have a drive of 750 megabytes or something, or 250 megabytes, like not a lot of space. You'd have sessions, you'd cut a track and you'd have to, okay, we don't need it. So there's a command in Pro Tools, it's command period. And that command period throws the track away. It throws the whole take away. Now, a lot of guys early on got used to doing that when they'd be like, yeah, no, we didn't get it. We'll come back to it. Command period. Because they didn't have a lot of drive space. And there was a story about an engineer in Nashville who remained nameless, that is actually nameless to me, really, who threw away, I think it was, no, I mean, it's nobody I know. So I think it was not even Joe Diffie, like a Joe Diffie take. And basically what happened was they did the take and the producer said, no, that wasn't it. And he's like, okay, command period. Now, once you command period, there's no undo. It's done. So it's then done. After he said that, he goes, no, let's take a listen to that. He's like, well, no, I hit command period. And he's like, well, why did you do that? Well, because you told me to. So I didn't tell you to do that. And it turned into a big fucking deal. So yeah, just keep it all. I actually just went through this session, this Stray Cat session I'm doing, because it's over like 6 different shows. I just went through and cleaned out the unused tracks. There was about 170 unused tracks. Wow. That have been from editing and moving, and checkerboarding and all the pieces together. Yeah. So
hey, we should drag the Josh on.
Let's get Josh. Sorry, Josh. We're
and while we're doing that, here's an interesting question. All right, ready?
Ladies and gentlemen,
we'll ask this with Josh. What up, Josh?
Hello. Can you hear me?
How are you?
Good.
Oh yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, Josh Thomas, Rupert Neve Designs, the one, the only, our good friend. He's drinking. He's got a nice drink. I got to pour some more here.
Cheers, fucker.
Cheers, fucker.
Hold on, I'm pouring a little more. I was trying to go slow, but
Oh man, yes, Josh Thomas. So, what's it been like? 25 years since your brother Freddie died and ended Queen. Thank you so much for being here, man. This is super awesome.
Yeah, very nice.
Yeah. All right, there you go.
I like your quarantine haircut.
Yeah. And quarantine COVID stash.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Yeah. You know what? Midge, I'm going to ask that question because it's interesting. And we'll just throw this out to the room. Where did that go? Hey guys, I got an ear question. You guys used to working in studios and have trained your ears, taste, etc. to analog. And now you have an objective view about how it affects sound. Can you, old people, thanks dude, tell me how to translate and transmit that to the new generation, numeric-based, who try to emulate those tastes and sounds, but without the ears trained to it and without the hardware to train those ears? Beard rules. Okay, I'm going to agree on the beard rules thing, with a special mention for mustache. And, Vance, why don't you wax poetic on that?
Well, I'll be happy to. I started recording in the early 90s let I'm sorry, not early 90s, early 80s. Let's go back another whole decade on analog tape. And back in those days, the consoles, the microphones were better as capture devices than the tape actually was. So we got very used to sort of like, okay, going down, I want a little too much top end on the snare, because when I play it back, that top end will sort of balance out with the tape compression and saturation. And nowadays, of course, you don't have to do that. So all it really is untraining your brain to basically just try your best to record your mix. Just try to record the best sounds you can. And then, nowadays, digital is pretty fucking good. A lot of people make converters. Josh makes a great converter.
Amazing.
People make great converters now. And so it's not like digital is better or worse than analog. It's just different. They're a different mindset to recording on tape. My next record I'm doing on tape. I'm going on 8-track. And so it's 8-track 2-inch. So that's a mindset that I'm going to take for a sound. And that's a thing. You can easily do that, though, in the digital realm. You can easily take that same mindset. You just have to know that what goes in is pretty much these days almost exactly what comes out.
Unless, a record that I love to talk about is Sufjan Stevens made this record called Illinois, which sounds amazing. And he made it on Tascam 8-track digital recorder. And because it didn't have a lot of storage, and it didn't have a lot of storage on it, so he turned the sample rate, the resolution down to 32K, which rolled top end off. It has to, right? Like everything over 16K is gone. And it made that record sounds amazing. It has a thick, really, really cool, really unique sound. And I'm pretty sure he made that mostly with like a 57.
Yeah, 157 on everything.
Yeah. So it's not the gear, it's the ears. If you want stuff to sound like a certain record, reference that record. Do some research, find some ways around it. I mean, we've done a lot of recording through a lot of different converters, and Josh, the converters that you guys made sound absolutely incredible. And it's iron, right? It's transformers, just like it was back in the day. We use them now because we want to. They used them then because they had to, but they certainly sound lovely. And that's the way we do it.
Yeah.
One of the first things Rupert taught me was to get a reference. Know that reference, listen to it. And he still has, he'll be 94 at the end of July. He still has great ears. He can pick up on distortion. He can pick up on stuff that some of the younger guys in the shop are struggling to hear. So you just need to get that reference, whether it's a classic analog album or a digital album or a Sufjan Stevens, and just know what you're shooting for from the beginning, and you'll have a much better chance of hitting it.
Yeah,
definitely.
Hey, Josh, so we should back up just a little bit and say a few things. One of them was, and we talked about this a little earlier, a lot of people don't really understand, A, who Rupert Neve is.
Yep.
B, who and what Neve is, and who and what Focusrite was, and who and what AMEC was, and who and what Rupert Neve Designs are. So can you just clear this up for us
and for all time,
the guys, the ladies and gentlemen here listening and watching, because I think it's confusing and also cool. I know about it, but
sure. Well, very long story short, because Rupert's 94 years old and has quite a bit of history. Was born in the UK, grew up in the Argentine, had evangelical parents, and World War II started. He went off back to England to fight for World War II, interested in electronics, etc. So they put him in the Signal Corps. He got out of the Army, got an old U.S. Ambulance, started doing remote recording, some public address stuff.
on lathe.
And this was, on lathe. And this was back in the days when essentially there was no Rupert Neve Designs, there's no Sweetwater, there was no reverb. If you wanted something, you had to basically either know somebody that could build it or figure out how to build it yourself. Mercifully, Rupert was the latter. Started building things, then other people figured out it would be easier to have Rupert build it than to figure out how to build it yourself, and kind of turned into a business. Fast forward to 1961, 62, when the original Rupert Neve and Company was formed in Little Shelford, England, just outside of Cambridge. That's where they started building the things that really kind of put him on the map, and built all the, the bespoke consoles for George Martin and tens of thousands of other people. 1975 came along, and some people came through and said, Rupert, the world's going digital. We have no need for an analog person like you, so we're going to go ahead and why don't you retire? So 1975 was the last time that Rupert had anything to do with what is now operating as the AMS Neve Company. The last consoles that he worked on were for George Martin and Jeff Emmerich, who wanted him to come back through and address some issues with the Air series consoles.
That was for Montserrat, right?
Air Montserrat, that's right. Yep, Jeff was unhappy in Montserrat. But yeah,
that's a big deal. Being unhappy in Montserrat. I mean, there's a lot to be happy about, well, except for the volcano.
That got Rupert on a plane.
So to interject for a second, is this the famous 30K story?
56K transformer.
Yeah.
Wrongly terminated.
Jeff
So
Emmerich,
Rupert retired for about 15 minutes. And Evelyn, his wife, said, you need to find a job or I'm going to kill you. So he did a couple of things and then started what was the Focusrite company. Started making modules that fit into old Neve consoles, and then people.
And I've used that Air desk there at Lyndhurst.
Yep.
That has all those modules in it.
Yep, that bank was some of the first ones ever shipped.
Yep.
And then around 1985, Focusrite went into receivership, was purchased by Phil Dutteridge. I believe they're public now, but he was run that company. So 85 was kind of Rupert's exit from Focusrite. Last time he had anything to do with them. Did a design consultation for AMEC, and I saw somebody ask some AMEC questions in there somewhere. So that went from the 90s up to 2004. Harman was purchased by AMEC, and
AMEC was purchased by Harman.
Yeah, AMEC was purchased by Harman, who was purchased by Samsung. And the beat goes on. So in 2004, I had gotten to know Rupert really well and had come down here to Wimberley and was hanging out with him and his wife, Evelyn. And then Rupert said, hey, I'm only 76. I think I want to start another company. Are you in? And so Rupert Neve Designs started in 2005. So
awesome.
And that takes us to 2020.
Now you were an AMEC employee, is that right? Did you work for AMEC?
That's right. I was an AMEC employee. That's where I got to know him. I actually met Rupert before that. My first AES in New York in the early 90s, I want to call it 93, maybe 94. Walked in, this was before cell phones and stuff, and good friend of mine, Lou Frisch, who talked me into coming up from Chicago to New York, and walk in, and I just hear my voice from around the crowd, and I find it, and I walk over, and Lou says, hey, Josh, I'm glad you made it. There are two people I need you to meet. Josh, Thomas, this is Rupert Neve and Les Paul. So 35 seconds into my first AES show, I'm just like some punk kid from the Midwest going, tape machines, mixing consoles. And probably said about that.
That's super awesome.
Yeah.
Somebody actually did ask. I have both an AMEC 9098 channel strip and the Focusrite ISA 110.
Yep.
Both are great. The AMEC sees a good deal more use. What secret am I missing on the Focusrite?
There's no secret. It sounds good and does what it does. It's those EQs are fairly similar. there's some notch stuff that the 9098 does that nothing else I've ever touched does. It's still one of the best notch EQs I've ever played with. And I can't remember, I think it has sheen, glow and sheen, which was one of the precursors to the silk that we currently use now. So there's a lot more to the 9098 channel strip than there is to the ISA, but they will sound fairly similar.
My first experience with the 9098 came about in another way. I worked back in my live sound days. I worked at Clare Brothers, and we had a couple of AMEC recalls.
Oh yeah,
which were a live console that people liked. I think some people liked, and one of them came back in from a tour, and the recall wasn't working right. So I was kind of like I was a mix engineer out on the road working for Clare, but when I was off, I would come in and work with Rex Ray and repair desks. So I got to get in and fixed the Rupert module inside it, which is pretty great. But that console sounded bad, to be honest with you. It was a Langley recall, if I remember.
Yeah.
And it didn't sound bad. It just didn't sound as good as my Midas, my XL3 at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But Claire had an account that had asked for some 9098 recall modules. And so those had gone out. There was 4 of them. And so I had to take this. I had this thing out on the road with me. So I was like, hey, can I get those 4 modules? So they sent me the 4 modules, and the difference was just mind-blowing how much better these 9098s. So then I was like, hey, can I get like 10 more? And they're like, no, they're like $6,000 a piece. So suck it up. But the great part about that recall was it actually used samples of Rupert's voice.
Recorded by Steve Chady, who you have both met.
Oh yeah.
Steve is the bomb.
That was his first session outside of the recording school here in San Marcos.
Wow.
The guy goes, hey, I've got a gig for you. And Steve's like, cool, it's going to be rock and roll. He goes, I need you to do a voiceover for this company called AMEC or something. And some British guy's going to show up. And it turned out that British guy was Rupert Neve, who just moved here to Texas.
Well, if anybody's ever used it, it was brilliant and way too slow. But to use the Rupert Mod, so basically what you did is you loaded the channel, and it would say what the knob was you were to turn, and then it would tell you which way to turn it. Rupert would. He would say, microphone gain, up, please, up. And you go up, and you keep turning up, slowly. That's it. And then it would go to the next thing. So it was this very English, slow process.
And if you didn't do anything for, I think it was 5 or 10 seconds, you'd hear Rupert's voice going, is anybody listening?
Oh, yeah, I do remember that. Yeah, it was really awesome. And immediately just turn that off because it was way too slow. Just turn the knob and see it, do the recall.
Hey, so somebody here in the sidebar is asking about the Focusrite stuff. Red, blue, ISA, AMEC Pure Path. What's the difference? Who came from what? Yep. Josh, you want to take that?
Well, Rupert did the original ISA stuff with Focusrite. Nothing to do with the reds or the blues or the greens or the whatever they came with. But the original ISA 110, 115, 215?
Yes.
I hate numbered crap. And there were only 2 consoles that were part delivered before Focusrite went under. One went to Master Rock. The first one went to Master Rock in the UK, and the other one went to Electric Lady in New York. Lots of more people, including Alan Parsons and Pete Townsend and some other people, put in deposits that never received consoles.
Ouch.
And I think it's long enough I can say that the original Focusrite console that showed up at Electric Lady that was supposed to be 64 inputs, I think, if memory serves, showed up with 4 input modules, and they had a session booked. So they actually, the guys from Electric Lady went over and got the people to restart the factory to build enough modules to complete that. So.
And one of those ended up in Nashville, and the other one ended up in Ocean Way in LA.
Yeah.
Right?
That's right. Was it Music Mill that had it?
Yep. It was Music Mill.
Yep.
Great desk. I still have modules from it. They sound amazing. I love them on drums.
Those original ISA modules are really good. But yeah, all the silk, the red range and the blue range and that range, that was after Rupert left. I'm not sure about that. And then the Pure Path was kind of what happened after the 9098 range. There's the Pure Path range that Rupert designed for AMEC. And it's interesting because that's when Rupert figured out he could do things that were razor flat with zero distortion out to 200K. And it turns out that that's exactly what digital is really good at. And the reason people like Rupert's classic modules and the classic sounds and EQs is because of the artifact that they create, whether it's harmonic distortion or the way an inductor EQ operates or a diode bridge compressor operates. And so he kind of the Pure Path was as far out as he went into the ultra clean, ultra linear straight wire with gain. And then Rupert Neve Designs was kind of a return to the early 70s.
Right.
And to play into that, there's another question that says, what are the tonal differences between real tape and transformer-based tape emulators like the RND 542? And what about the headroom on both?
Well, I can say we've got 23 dB and some change as our maximum output with probably internal headroom of plus 26 on the 542. Tape, it depends on the machine and what formulation you're running. Less noise. I mean, we modeled the 542 off of some Studer stuff that we had access to, which was the original 5042. It sounds slightly different. One of the things that we've learned is a lot of people can't hear subtle differences anymore. So we had to make some of the effects like silk, the texture, and the 542. We had to make it a lot more obvious and introduce a lot more distortion that people can hear, and then back it off.
I'm gonna bring up a controversial but possible idea on that, and that is people can't hear it because they're only hearing one module. Whereas I know all of us who have recorded and mixed on consoles for years and years, we just take into account sort of the console that we're recording or mixing on, that the entire console is going to impart a sound up on the desk. And so the entire console, it interacts with itself in so many ways. But if you're just using a single module, you might not ever hear that thing that happens when you put
it's a cumulative effect. Yeah.
That's a whole nother deal. So so hey, there's a couple questions here. Oh, I have actually a couple more questions. And one of the things we talked about before we get to those, how does Rupert think about like the Shelford channel, the Shelford modules, one of the Shelford modules, comparing that to like a 1073? I mean, and like the other question is obviously like 1073 is a Rupert design, and so is a Shelford. Like and they're not the same, but they're not so far apart. You know what I mean?
No, and you can get most of the things that you want out of a Shelford channel that people find in a 1073. The Shelford channel is essentially a classic Neve from the 70s, as Rupert wished he would be able to make it then, with a lot more dynamic range, a lot more headroom. We're at a 26.5, 27 dB of headroom, and the noise floor and dynamic range are much better on the Shelford channel than what you could get out of the classic Neves. But I mean, the EQs were modeled off after the best 1064 we could find for the bottom, the best 1073 we could find. I mean, we had engineers send through. It's like, send us your golden channels. We want to measure them. Rupert wants to hear them. We all want to hear them. We want to hear. And so it's kind of a greatest hits module.
Right. That's awesome. And I would tell you a great story about the diode bridge compressor, but It was sent to me, intercepted by Ryan Hewitt. He's never given it back. So that's a whole nother story. But because I'm like, I love 2254s. Mitch has 4 of them on his desk up front.
Mhm.
I love them. I know Reid has some.
Yep.
The problem is you can't afford them anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, that you just can't afford them anymore. I mean,
Well,
Rupert
shakes his head at what 1073s and 2254s and all that stuff go for. I mean, it doesn't make any sense to him that people will pay how much, eight grand for a 1073 now?
I know it's crazy.
It's just not.
I remember when it was 5. I remember when it was 3.
Yeah.
It's not even the best sounding vintage Neve module.
Pretty damn good one.
No, but it's the reference.
Yeah, I mean, for me, 1073, 1084, those are the two. Like the 1073 is my favorite, but then the 1084 is like, oh, it's just a little bit more stuff. Really, really, really good. And 1064s, 1060, all those are great.
1064 is my jam. A creamy bottom and beautiful top air.
You love that 700, huh?
Yeah, it's the best low end of anything that I've heard that Rupert's done.
Yeah.
Interesting.
That's why we did it.
I've used a mess of them, and every time there's one around, I'll use it and have no problem with it.
Well, and you know what's funny when you say that? That's kind of what happened when we did that live to Lathe show. We had a bunch of the Rupert Neve stuff, and getting sounds in that was like that. Plug in a microphone. It was actually the Rupert Neve microphone, the tube mic. That into the Shelford, barely any EQ, a little bit of compression. It was great.
Yep.
In fact, the artist was like, "This is the best I've ever heard my voice sound." I was like, "Well, I'm not doing anything."
Yeah.
So,
well, that's why, Rupert's stuff still, that's why we're still relevant, is because he makes everybody's job of getting to the vision of what they hear or what they want to get to easier. It's the path of least resistance.
Yeah.
I do see a question up here I'd like to address.
Do it.
How do you feel Neve style gear performs in a 500 series format? Not as well.
No. Single-ended power supply is the key.
Yeah, you got plus minus 15 volt rails, so you're going to have less headroom, less dynamic range. We can't fit. We're happy with the 500 series stuff we do, but we can't fit our full size output transformer in the 500 series format. Less headroom, less dynamic range. If you can at all, make the stretch and get those things that will capture the sound as good as you possibly can.
Right.
Well, and I'm probably on record somewhere saying this, but students ask me all the time, like, what kind of gear should I get? And I was like, well, it's really easy. Get a good microphone and get a Shelford channel, and you can record anything.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, what's Rupert been doing here in quarantine land?
Yeah, any fun stuff?
The soldering iron, right?
Rupert sequestered in the bunker with a team of ex-Mossad agents with submachine guns keeping the COVID at bay.
Yeah.
He's lonely. He can't take visitors right now. He is going to be 94 at the end of July.
Yeah.
Talk to him a couple times a week. He's lonely, but he's all there, and he's good.
He's good. So earlier you threw out a little teaser. You said no trade shows this year. So maybe you can talk about things that you might be working on.
Yeah. Well, we had some stuff that we were going to launch at Summer NAMM, but there is no Summer NAMM.
No, I'm bummed out about it.
Me too.
Our Summer NAMM party is legendary.
Yep.
For those of you who don't know, Sputnik Sound throws a huge party with Rupert Neve Designs, and we've partnered up with Rupert Neve. We partnered up with Reverb. It's a pretty big deal. I think we had 400 hot chicken tenders this year. We went through 9 gallons of bullet bourbon and rye.
Really? That's it?
2 kegs, and they were done by 10:30. We went out and bought 20 cases of PBR. Yeah. Those were done by midnight. It was a good party. I kind of lost myself somewhere in all that. I don't know where I went. So, you know.
I can't wait till we can all gather up again.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys are my people, and I miss you.
And you know, Josh, the other thing, you know what we just missed? Easter.
I know.
Josh
thought about Hooters.
Josh has been to my family. My family, we do a traditional Easter dinner at Hooters because, you know, there's nobody there. It's pretty great. You go and nobody there, hot wings, and it's in an interesting part of town here in Nashville. Interesting. There's a lot of things to check out. A lot of people walking around on the streets
looking to make friends.
Looking to make friends.
$20
for $20. Yeah, it's some interesting people watching. So it's not very. It's probably blasphemy, all of it. But you know.
Well, maybe you're gonna have to combine Thanksgiving and Easter and just call it Feaster.
Yeah. Well, Thanksgiving's a whole nother ball of wax.
But, I know.
So since we have no trade shows, what blood can we squeeze out of this onion here?
Well, we were really looking forward to 2020. Had 4 new products ready.
It all went to shit.
To hit the world, and then, you know, it all went to shit. So we still have the 4 products. We've got an 8-channel DI, single rack space. We've got a 2-channel converter with some of the best bits of the MVP.
Right. Bits.
Yeah.
Converter.
We have a lot of people that buy 2 Shelford channels just so they can have 2 really fast release and attack diode bridge compressors.
Right.
So they figured, oh, well, we can put 2 of those in a single rack space.
Now we're talking. Yeah.
So we did that. Yeah. So a couple of things coming this summer still.
Yeah, I think you better put one of those down for me. So
get a care package to Tennessee.
That is right up my fucking alley there. Stereo diode bridge compressor, hell yeah. You know, it's interesting. My mix patch initially started out using 2254s in one of my parallel buses. And that was because I was working in Jack White's all the time.
Yep.
But and I have a 33609, not quite the same thing.
Nope.
But you know, I would be very interested in a diode bridge, your diode bridge. That would be awesome.
Yep.
Yeah. So there's a question here. What's your take on passive summing? I mean, I know Rupert Neve makes a mixer.
Yep.
Are you guys ever gonna maybe think about jumping into like some sort of a, you know, summing box or something?
They make that. They have that.
We have 2 summing.
You have the masterpiece, right? Or not masterpiece, the master. What's it called? Masterpiece.
Master bus processor, but we have the 5059 and the 5060.
Right.
And we'll have a little brother to that, which will be out later this year.
Oh, okay, cool.
But I mean, the whole thing with passive summing, it's like, I mean, I don't want to rip on anybody, but a name brand DAW's summing mixer internally was up until a few years ago flawed.
Yes.
And things would sound better.
That name would be Abbott. If
you went through a passive summing mixer or any summing mixer or anything else to get down to 2 tracks than the internal mix bus on that DAW.
Yeah.
It's not messed up anymore.
Yeah, no, they kind of got that sorted out.
They're just, and there really isn't, you know, we're well beyond the point of digital bad, analog good.
Yeah.
You know, we're now in the land of, well, analog's still better for some things and digital's better for other things. But the whole, I mean, it's kind of like the pure path thing. There's no sense in making something that's straight wire with gain when digital has that for days. And that's what it is really, really good at.
Right.
There are other things that are a little more complex that, arguably digital isn't quite there yet. But
well, what I thought was interesting, Josh, was Joey Rea, who does some of the best hip hop mixing, I think, in the last 20 years. Yeah. And he just bought a 5088 console. And, you would think if you were doing hip hop, you'd leave it in the box because the box is DC to light as far as low end goes. But now here he is with the Rupert Neve Designs desk, and he's like over the moon about it.
And then LP bought one.
Nice. Very nice.
Yeah.
But he's using that mostly for mixing, right? He doesn't do a ton of recording there.
No.
Yeah.
No. It's almost all mixing.
That's killer.
Well, yeah. I can tell you after mixing about 35 or 40, live things at Third Man on the 5088 at Third Man.
Yep.
Reid mixed the Willie Nelson thing that I cut at Third Man.
So good.
The desk is the 5088 is a really, really beautiful sounding desk, and it's come a long way from the original to now. You guys have learned a lot, obviously, and it keep going. Is there anything else beyond this? I mean, that you want to throw out there, or just gonna leave us hanging?
No, I mean, we're very busy. We have probably. I mean, you guys have both been to visit us at the shop, and other people, once this COVID thing is over, please come.
Yeah, man, the shop is awesome.
Grab some barbecue. But, I mean, we've got Rupert and a team of 4 engineers and probably, 1.5 to 2 dozen projects on some level of from this is something we should do at some point to, like the 4 things that we're going to have out here in the coming months that we're, looking at first articles. So we're really busy, and there's lots of more stuff that we have to say.
I have to say, I think Reid and I both will have to, because I'm pretty sure that Reid's done this. You have to go see Josh in Wimberley, and you have to let him take you the back way through the hill country to Smitty's.
The Meat Church.
And you have to go to Meat Church, because I'm telling you right now, I wasn't ready for it. I wasn't ready for
me either. I was unprepared.
And then when it happened, that's all I could think about. And here's a side note, Josh. Diane and I went down to Austin. We drove over from Houston. We were seeing friends there in Austin. And we're on the way over, from Houston. The drive.
I do.
And I was like, hey, Dad, are you hungry? Because there's this place we could go. It's just right down this road here. You turn at the Buc-ee's. You know what I'm talking about. There, you turn at the Buc-ee's.
Cleanest bathrooms on the planet.
There you go. And we had to go to Buc-ee's. Had to get some gummy worms off the wall of gummy worms. But we went down to Smitty's, and she's like, oh, yeah, yeah, okay. And we got there, and we got the last of the in-cut pork chop. And we got the last of the prime rib.
That's the stuff.
And, dude, it was just like, holy fucking shit. And what's crazy is she's like, barbecue. And she's about 5 or 6 minutes into it, making the deal with the avocado and the jalapenos. Yep. And she's just like, hands in it. We've got our Lone Stars.
No forks.
Just, and then all we could do is, and our friends, now there's another barbecue place that was good, but it's outside Austin. It's not Black's, or it's not the other one. No, it's outside. It's like out to the east, I think. It's a person's name, but we went there, and they were just all about it. And we were like both eating, and she's like, "This is not as good as Smitty's," and I was "Nothing is as good as Smitty's."
Well, Franklin does a pretty damn good job, but
Franklin, pretty great.
Smitty's is a 1064 for your tongue.
Yeah. and it's weird too, because I don't really care for prime rib.
I mean, either.
It's the only prime rib I enjoy.
Yeah,
exactly.
And what's
I was doubting. I was true to this. I was doubting Thomas when he said, "You got to get the prime rib because it's my least favorite of anything, and it's one of the best things I've ever eaten in my life."
I will say that Smitty's brisket was okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Franklin's or Black's, I hear, is better. And which one do you think? You're local. You tell us.
Well, they're different. And I will say that, the things that I go for Smitty's for, I'll have some brisket, but I'm there for the prime rib. I'm there for the in-cut pork chop. I'm there for their homemade sausage.
Yeah.
And I think they have the best sausage out of anybody in the Hill Country. Franklin's brisket, I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. It's impeccable. Kent Black's, I love that. It's a little saltier. I prefer his bark better. But I mean, I'm blessed. There's no bad barbecue here. It's like being in New York and going, I'm going to get a slice of pizza. It's going to be great. Just don't go to Sbarro, and it's going to be great.
The last time I was in New York, I took Mike, my assistant, and he had only been there one time ever. And we were in Times Square up on 52nd.
Yep.
Or 54th, sorry, the Hilton Garden there. And so we walked down, there's a famous Ray's, right? So we left the studio. We were at Power Station. We went up back, we went down, and Mike's been in New York this day for 10 hours or something. We go in, we walk into Ray's, and Flavor Flav is in there with family buying his family pizza. And it's obviously his family from out of town, because he's doing the whole talking about the whole, so here's how you got to get this, you got to get this. And Mike, of course, is like, and I was like, you're having a New York moment, man. This is how New York City is. You're going to look up and there's somebody, there you go.
And that's not even the best stuff in New York.
No. It's just, it was the closest, Yeah.
No, it's totally good. So, hey, Enrico asked two questions that I want to combine. It says, if you have and we should address the question inside of this question. If you have no analog desk, what's your take on passive summing into a stereo transformer preamp or a tube preamp? Does passive summing add something to the soundstage rather than just pass your audio straight through to the line preamps? And then he follows up, aren't stuff like the 5059 just passive summing with in and output transformers for makeup gain and tone character? Go.
Well, it's not. It makes it not a passive mixer at that point. It's an active.
Change it.
Yeah, it's an active gain stage, and there are active gain stages throughout. I mean, the thing I invite people to do is to hear some stuff, listen to some stuff, see what works for you. I mean, everybody. You guys are on SSL, 4Ks. That doesn't work for everybody.
No.
8078s don't work for everybody. Figure out what you're trying to get to, that sound in your head or your favorite album, and then figure out the best way for you to get there. But I mean, passive summing is, what it's supposed, I mean, if it's supposed to be passive, I mean, it kind of says it on the tin, it doesn't add a whole lot, and it's not correcting any of the things that used to be a problem 5 or 6 years ago.
Right. Yeah, I remember about 10 or so years ago, I bought one of those, whatever it was that had all the switches on it. It was all passive, and you had to use mic pre's.
Yeah.
And I remember using it and being like, okay, cool. Well, let me try these APIs. Oh, wow, that's really nice. Oh, let's try these 1072s because I had some. Oh, that's really nice too. But what I ended up kind of coming to the realization was I still wanted some auxes. I still wanted to turn some knobs. I still wanted there to be more stuff. And so fulcrum, exactly. That was exactly what it was. I ended up the thing just didn't exactly work. And so, your mileage may vary, the things behind you in the mirror are bigger than your whatever. So, yeah,
I mean, I love transformers. Transformers always sound, right? Different transformers sound better than certain things. I have transformers on my mix bus. I cut stuff through R&D stuff. It's all full of transformers. Like, I like that sound. So if you take a Pro Tools mix and you put it out through a passive mixer and you slam it through a Shelford channel, or you slam it through a 1073, it's gonna sound different because the transformers ring and they do all sorts of stuff, and you can change the way that sounds by changing the gain. And it's just a tool. It's a great tool. I think it sounds amazing. And every time I try and get rid of transformers, I end up, damn it, turning them back on because they just sound great. But to each his own.
There's a question on here, Josh, about the difference between tape and the tape emulators. So you want to address that?
Yeah.
I mean, we based our 5042, which was the original one that's now discontinued, now the 542s, off of tape. Some Studer machines that we had access to.
They have heads. They literally have heads in them.
Yeah, audio is jumping a magnetic gap through the transformer. And it's kind of a replay and repro circuit that you can drive into to kind of get that tape, that slight compression, smoothing kind of sound. And then we combined it with the 542 with the silk red and the silk blue, which gives you some more flavor to add to things.
Does anybody have a rack of a bunch of the stuff to run everything through?
Yeah.
That would be fun.
Does anybody?
Do you have a rack of those, Vance? Do you? Might have to record through those. Slut. All right. So let's see. Mark, kill some of these questions as we answer them. Guys, I love the show. Thank you. And my master bus processor, but I don't understand the SFE to comp feature. Am I missing out on something fun?
I don't either.
Never touched it. Nobody has figured out what it's good for.
What is it?
That is something that one of the designers came up with that said, hey, you know how it sounds really good with the SFE at the end of the compressor, and that we can do some stuff like
SFE?
Wide stereo field editor.
Oh, okay.
Which is kind of the WIT thing that Rupert originally came up with on some of the vintage Neve stuff. It then showed up on some Amex stuff and now has some home. And then he goes, I can take it so the signal will hit the SFE first and then the compressor. And it's like, okay. And so we did it. And then we're like, okay, well, when would this be a good thing to do? And we haven't found it yet. If anybody has, please let us know. But I can tell you this, if you accidentally hit it, you can really screw some stuff up.
Yeah, that SFE is kind of like it's a little like heroin. It's like, oh wow, that's cool. Wow, that's really cool. It's really cool. And then you send out your mix, and people are like, what's weird, when it plays back on my iPhone, I don't hear anything.
Yeah, and the lathe people will love you for it.
Oh yeah, put the drums through that. It'll be great.
No. So yeah, you haven't missed anything, and we don't know why it's there either.
Isn't that the great thing about designers and people like designing things?
Yeah.
Well, I've always said, I have a Massenburg compressor. I know that Vance has a Massenburg compressor. Yeah. There are things on that compressor that I like to say there are 3 people on Earth that know how to use that thing, and 2 of them are George.
Yeah. What's funny is George won't use he doesn't use the what is it?
Hysteresis?
The hysteresis. He doesn't use it. I go, why did you have it on here if you don't use it? He goes, oh, that was some idea that there was these guys in Japan who are really wanting this hysteresis thing. I'm like, what does it do? He goes, just don't use it. But what's funny is that if you want it to do something, you have to just, whatever it is you're doing, you have to just play it and turn the knob for a while. I mean, and then once you do, I just leave it. I mean, I love my GML compressor. I use it for one thing all the time. I've never moved the knobs. I'm afraid to move the knobs. It probably won't work.
What do you use it for, Vance?
Vocal parallel bus.
Yep. I love it.
Just nice compression, and the peak limiter. Peak limiter is awesome. That pushes those like S's and things down. According to George, the side chain processor in that compressor is the most complicated analog computer ever built.
I don't doubt it. I'm going to call bullshit on that because I think George Massenberg's brain is the most complicated analog computer ever built.
Well, I would love to have George on here, but it would just end up, I think, I love you, but it's just going to end up being one of those things.
All right. Here's another question that I'm sure everyone is curious about. Josh, when you and Rupert hear the software emulations, Waves, UAD, Yamaha, whatever, is it, wow, they really nailed it, or close, not quite, thanks for playing? This is from Barry.
Some of the software emulations have gotten very, very good. I just downloaded Luna and have that running. But it's probably as good as they can get it. I haven't heard any of the Wave stuff, to be honest. I've heard some of the UAD stuff, and I've heard, of course, the Yamaha stuff, and it's really, really close. The
thing I love about the UAD, I'm not going to speak to the Neve stuff, but the thing I love about the UAD is that the feeling I get when I'm mixing on a Neve desk, and I want to do a certain thing, I can just, like on 1073, boom, a little bit of 3K. I go just, oh, yep, there's that. A little bit of 10K, and then 100, and that thing that I'm wanting happens. And that isn't a thing that happens very often with most other. Oh, look who it is, ladies and gentlemen. It's Pirate Pete. Pete Lyman.
Okay, so while you're here, we got a quick question. What does the SFE to comp button do on the master bus processor?
Ask Dennis. I've never used it.
All right, fair enough.
I'm not that fancy.
So nobody knows. Nobody knows.
I use the SFE all the time. Dennis has explained it to me.
Hey, how many records have you done in the last whenever that haven't had a master bus processor on
them? This year, two
records that haven't had the MVP.
Yeah, it's on everything.
I think the MVP is the MVP. I can't say that. I can say that without Josh.
I love you, Josh.
Love you too, Pete.
Yeah, Pito.
We are social distancing
in the same building.
And seriously, serious about it. No, I owe him $100. Like, it's sitting right here, and he won't come get it because he's distancing. So I think I'm going to go spend this on computers. All right, so plugins sound really good.
Yeah. I like strap-ons better, but yeah.
Yeah. All right. There you go. Boom. All right, Josh, I want to get your opinion on this. It's a good question, and I know you have an interesting answer because of the guy you work with. A question for old people. Another question for old people.
Nice.
Mij, you should show up at one of our parties. We're going to have a conversation. How do you handle the fact that your ears can no more hear some of the frequencies you're working with because of aging? So when we talk about air in a track, how can you manage it if you can't hear it? Josh, you have a unique perspective on that.
I will say this. Rupert can still tell if we're band limiting things. I don't think that he is hearing 12 or 16K tones, but the way he put it to me when I was scratching my head one day, when he came through and nailed some distortion and some other things that one of our design engineers was struggling with, is that it's a muscle, and it's just like the 90-year-old guys that are walking up Mount Fuji. If you use it and you always use it and you continue to use it, it will be there for you.
As long as you don't go on tour for 30 years in front of a Marshall stack or 12.
Yeah, then you lose it in your 30s anyway. But, right. I mean, if you listen to high quality recordings that you know and enjoy on a regular basis, your ear will hear it.
Well, the one thing you said earlier, was great, is talking about with Rupert is the reference.
Yeah.
If you have a reference, so whatever that reference is either the speakers in your control room, which that's what they are for me, or the speakers in your basement, sort of, somewhat, your car, whatever it is, whatever your reference is, where you go, okay, here's where I know where my mix sounds good, or here's where I know where a mix should sound like this. As long as you have that, I mean, you're hearing, Chris said it really, you just feel that the mix is there.
Yeah.
You know? And the other thing, I know for me, I hire young guys, you know, who hear the, you know, 19K flyback transformer shit, or oh, there's some high frequency thing. I mix really quiet most all the time. And so, yeah, you know, I may miss something up high there, but that's why you have a great assistant or you have somebody. And, you know, the good news is at my age, I'm quite a bit older than Reid, but at my age, like, you know, I can use an assistant. I have an assistant to check things out. But
well, we can get into a long conversation too about the fact that it's not just frequency response; it's localization. You know, our brains and our ears are designed to localize threats. And there is a lot of information that's above 15, above 20K that is more localization than it is just frequency response. So I think what Chris said, Chris Shaw, who's, as you guys I'm sure know, is an amazingly badass engineer. He said, you feel it. That's totally true.
Yeah, although
Chris has never been to Smitty's, and I think that's a travesty that needs to be corrected.
He's far too thin.
He is far too thin. Yeah. He needs fattening up a little bit.
That's
but
true.
He's done a number of my favorite albums.
Yes. Yeah.
Amazing stories.
His talk a couple weeks ago with Andrew, those guys, like, they got nerding on like scripting and all that. I mean, I'm a nerd, man. I mean, I'll talk to you about, you know, locking tape machines together to SMPTE and all the different things and pull-ups and pull-downs and all that stupid shit. But they started talking about, you know, all these things for bouncing and stems. I just was like, yeah.
Well, you know what? Sign up for Puremix and go back and watch that because you'll learn a ton of shit.
I am signed up.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, good. Oh, cool. Chris is scripting.
Perfect.
Yeah, exactly.
Why mix when you can script?
Yes, exactly.
So script some barbecue, Shaw.
Yeah, but there's a lot of cool stuff, man, and what he was talking about, especially if you're in the box, you're working in the box, and you know, these are all issues. I remember talking to Fab one time a couple of years ago about his workflow, and he was basically mixing so that when he went to print, he printed his master, all the versions, and all the stems all at the same time in one pass. And, you know, like, that's kind of a dream. That would be awesome. But at the same time, for me, that gives me an hour most of the time to go fuck off and get my head out of this mix I'm doing. Mike will do it and go, you know, take care of the backup, or, you know, just go read a book, or, you know, the thing I normally do is sit in my chair over here and read The Onion, you know, or just look at.
How do you know it's The Onion anymore? That's my question.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. What is The Onion and what is the coronavirus you know, conference every day or whatever? Same fucking thing.
All right, Josh, I'm trying to design and build a 2-stage BJT mic activator. Gotten so far with YouTube and electronics. Do you have any recommendations for resource materials, reference, structured learning for learning how or understanding how audio circuits work?
Reach out to Paul Wolf. I'm sure he'd be happy to help you.
Yeah, Paul, he's very helpful. Find him on, yeah.
Paul knows all.
Here's my deal: is I got to meet Rupert Neve and Les Paul early on in life, And now when I need a DI, I just go, Rupert, could you make me a DI? Or Rupert, could you make me a phono stage?
Yep.
I've never had to learn any of that stuff. I just hang out with really talented people.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it's kind of a great situation you have there. I have this recording on my phone. Do you remember that day, Josh?
I do.
I have this recording on my phone.
That was a special day.
Yeah, we got Rupert just at the shop there to start talking about his time during World War II, and Rupert he's got some pretty interesting stories that I am pretty confident no one knows anything about. That someday I'd love to have somebody transcribe off this thing on my phone, because
I've got hundreds of hours that at some point need to be transcribed, because I mean, 1073, 5088, all of that. But he's just an amazing guy who's lived an absolutely amazing life, as has his wife, Evelyn. I mean, she grew up in British India, which is now Pakistan, and basically had to march through quarter-mile snow tunnels to get to her school through valleys and stuff.
Wow.
I mean, these are people that have lived.
I love the fact that Rupert married a woman named Evelyn.
Oh yeah,
which is pretty, like
not Evelyn.
No,
Evelyn.
Oh yeah, Evelyn. Yeah. Well, Rupert, he's. I mean, I really cherish this. I think I pushed it to every possible cloud service that I possibly could find to just spread it out across, all my devices, because it's really special. And I'm a nerd. I'm a big Bletchley Park nerd, and cryptology, and all the things happened during World War II, and Rupert just somehow found himself in the middle of all that.
Yep.
As a young guy working at the Signal Corps, just there he was. So pretty awesome.
Is that the one where he talked about the intercepted German tape machine where they were using paper as the backing or something?
Yeah, that's I think it was Dieppe. The raid.
I've never heard that story.
They captured that, and they called him and asked him to figure out what it was.
Yep.
Basically, what happened was the Germans had. I mean, I'll tell a little bit of the story. The Germans during World War II had developed earlier than that a tape recorder, and they were using a paper tape, an oxide-coated paper tape, and they were using it to do Morse code into the machine at half speed, and then playing it back at double speed, while then having decoder stations recording at double speed and then playing back at half speed. And the British couldn't figure out how to decode it because it was so fast. They had no frame of reference to half speed, double speed, anything. So
the pitch wasn't right yet.
Yeah, these commandos went ashore, and it was way too fast for somebody to play back. There's no way to do it. And of course, the British were capturing them on transcription discs, but it was still so fast they couldn't figure it out. And so these commandos went ashore, and they stole this machine and got it to Bletchley Park. And Bletchley Park, I think he said it was his girlfriend at the time worked there.
Pre-Evelyn.
Not Evelyn, but his other girlfriend at the time, or someone he knew. Let's put it that way.
A special friend.
A friend during the war, worked there, and she had him come in, and he figured out what it was, and it was basically a tape recorder. But of course, the Americans, nobody had ever seen one.
No.
And the next one that was found where? Birch's Garden, by the guys who started Ampex.
Fascinating. Stolen
German technology.
Of course, it got us to the moon, and it got us rock and roll.
Or did it?
Or did it? Hey, Josh, over in the corner, see this guy? He said, I'll transcribe Rupert Neve tapes. That sounds awesome. Maybe you should crowdsource that. Maybe you've got a new intern right there.
Yeah.
It's on the list of things to do.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta be honest with you,
man.
It was really amazing. And I like I said, I still I have in my voice memos, I have Rupert Neve and fart 1, 2, and 3. So
Hopefully it's not from the same
I
session.
hope Rupert's not watching this.
no, I hope so too.
Hey, Jake, here's your opportunity, man. If you want to step up and open that door, I bet you could
Check
trade
this
your time for a mic pre or two.
God dang, it's just me.
That's Rupert.
Audio started on paper tape from stuff that was introduced for the enemy submarines. And then when we finally got to plastic tape, that was really when it started to come into its own.
Yeah. Yeah, every now and then you just find yourself in these weird little rooms with people who have, changed lives and changed my life in ways I didn't even know it at the time. And I just sat there and was like wide-eyed and tried to keep my mouth shut.
Yep.
Talk, so
It was a magic day.
it was really awesome. We had Smitty's. We saw World War II airplanes. We had Lone Star beer and Bluebell ice cream.
Yeah. Gotta have the Bluebell.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, man, I tell you, Josh, it's great to see you, bud. And Reid will back me up on this. One of my favorite people in the entire world to hang out with, to be around. Every trade show, you have to hang out at the Rupert Neve booth, Rupert Neve Designs booth. Have to hang out with Josh. We have to go to dinner somewhere. Josh is it's just one of my favorite people in the whole world. And I'm so happy you're here and happy you're staying safe. And I love your haircut. It's actually really awesome. I dig it.
Happy you're keeping the legacy, the Rupert Neve kick-ass audio legacy rocking.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, right back at you guys, and I really can't wait till we can gather up in person again.
Yeah, I think everybody kind of is feeling that. I mean, I don't know how this little experiment that we're in the middle of is going to play out. But I can tell you this. I think this has nothing to do with tech or anything, but I feel like that this pandemic, this issue has made a lot of people realize that the people in their lives are worth way more time than we're being given to them, if you know what I mean. And it's going to be nice.
Yeah,
it really is. And Josh has got a bunch of great people working for him. Dodgy Geezer, Top Geezer.
Martin Arthur's, Jonathan Pines, Dennis Aliquer, Lucas Burden, Semple. I mean, we have an amazing crew.
Hey, can I ask you a question about SwiftMix?
Yeah.
Does SwiftMix, if you switch to Huey, does it go to Unity? So, like, if you have a mix-up on the 5088 and you're automating, but you switch to a Huey layer where you want to use the fader as a Huey layer, does that channel switch to 0?
No. The way SwiftMix works is it is not a controller. It is an actual analog fader.
Analog,
So it will not go to 0 unless that's the place in the DAW where you have it at.
Right. Okay.
It will go to directly wherever it is.
Right.
On that first 30.
I guess what I was getting at was, maybe I'm offering a feature suggestion.
Please, Dennis will be thrilled.
Yeah, Dennis will be thrilled. Well,
SFE to comp function.
Yeah, the only reason
SFE to SwiftMix.
Yeah, the only reason I bring that up is and not to bring up other people's stuff, but I did mix a record recently on the new automation that's in the new legacy. And when you switch to the Huey layer, the faders go to 0. The audio fader goes to Unity. And so then your audio fader is now a Pro Tools fader. When you take it out, it switches back to where it was before. So that's why I asked. I wasn't sure about that.
Is there's an actual controller, or is it an actual fader?
It's both.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it's both. It's a relay.
Yeah.
It's a relay. It's a relay inside that switches the audio taper to a resistor, basically.
Yep. Let's have a chat outside the 210 people
Yeah.
that are here with us right now. But there's something in the works.
I think I understand. Yes. All right. Okay, cool. Well, see, I love it when we get to this is what, like what happens like in the actor's studio when he asks that question that the actor doesn't exactly want to answer.
Yeah, I've got a great story that I can't tell here.
Well, that's all right. We'll sort that out. Awesome. Well, Josh, you got anything to say to anybody out there in the world?
I have a very important question for my friends in Nashville. Have you been to Joyland?
No. What's Joyland?
Joyland is the dude from Husk's latest restaurant.
Heard about it, Sean Brock.
Open,
Heard
yeah,
about
Sean
it.
Brock.
But then it closed, right? All of it happened, right?
Yeah.
But now it's open again.
No, I'm still not going.
Really?
No,
Nope.
cheeseburgers and fried chicken.
I mean, I will go. Don't get me wrong. I will go, but
Can I answer that by proxy?
Yep.
It is literally 25 feet from the door of Sterling.
oh yeah.
So Ted has been and reports it excellent and very likely the cause of his untimely and early demise.
Right on. Well, everybody stay safe.
We're
Keep in mind what's important. We will get through this, and we all need to gather up soon.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah.
All right, cool, Josh. Well, thanks for being on. I think we're gonna take some questions if people have questions other than for Josh or for other than Josh. But as far as I'm saying, man, thanks so much, and
Thanks, dude. Love you.
Love you too. I'm going to take
Josh,
off.
thanks for coming
Let's
on.
talk because I have to pee.
Oh,
Nice.
yeah, very important.
All right.
So, Vance,
Yeah,
do you want to hammer through some of these questions?
sure, man. Let's do it. Let's bang.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
So, first one, this was a while ago. What are the advantages of three-way versus two-way monitors besides mid-range and being able to turn them on their side? Well, I'll throw in my answer to that. One,
Okay.
don't turn the monitors on their side. You want the tweeters and the mid-ranges, and all of them preferably to all be in a line vertically. So when you move in between the speakers, like they're all hitting you at the same time instead of it shifting. That being said, again, Bob Clearmountain has mixed 6 million absolutely kick-ass records on a pair of NS10s on an SSL console, which according to everybody on Gear Sluts is the worst way to do anything. You be the judge. It really just depends on the speaker design. If it's a good design, it sounds great. PMCs and ATCs are three-way speakers and they kick ass.
Yeah, but unlike the PMCs, ATCs allow you, if you want to put them on their side, to move the tweeter on top of the mid-range.
True.
And and even I think you have a set of 150s, right?
Yep.
And your 150s could go on their side. They have the port. So the big deal is that the mid-range and the tweeter should be in a line. That's a line array concept. The low frequency is never going to ever be in line or in phase, actually, which is kind of an whole thing. As long as the mid-range and your tweeter are in line, you're in good shape. I have walked in on mixers using ProAx. Hold on, I'm trying to point at it. It's hard. That right there on their side. According to Richard Dodd, that's wrong. And according to me, after using them for ages, I would never do that in a million years. But your mileage may vary. Yep. I also know people who put the ProAx with the tweeters on the outside. Again, absolutely not supposed to be that way. It's supposed to be on the inside. But your mileage may vary. I've seen ATC 300s in rooms where the mid-range is on the outside. Again, not supposed to be that way, or on the inside. Not supposed to be that way, or whatever. Outside, I mean. Not supposed to be that way, but your mileage may vary. You know, objects in the mirror maybe closer than they appear.
One man's curse word is another man's adjective.
Yeah, one man's boy highs, another man's far out.
Yep, there you go.
OMGs, another man's WTF.
All right, guys, how do you handle gain staging, clip gain in the box before hitting your compressors or your board? Do you have a set level value?
No.
Me either.
No. I'm right now mixing this massive, and it is massive, Stray Cats record, live record. It's sessions from all over the world. Every single one of them is different. So basically what I did was I set up using the meters on the desk, so that the meters on the desk pretty much behind me here are about the same level, whether I go from one song to another song to a song recorded elsewhere. They're all the same level meter-wise, even though the tracks are recorded all over the place. Some of that I did in clip gain, some of it I did with faders. So,
you know, a really easy way to deal with that if you're doing the in the box and the analog thing is create a master trim fader, turn everything down 6 dB, turn your monitor up 6 dB. If it sounds better, you're hitting stuff too hot.
Yeah. I have found oftentimes with sessions like this one, or big sprawling sessions, that VCA faders in Pro Tools are the thing that make it all work for me. Even though I have VCAs here and I have a console, once you're in automation mode, the ability to sort of trim the drums down in spots or the bass up in spots or whatever, the VCAs are definitely the way to do that. Not groups, use the VCAs. And use trim. Because trim, the trim is the shit. Use the trim automation.
Yeah, I wish that there was a shortcut, and there probably is, and I just haven't discovered it. I wish there was a shortcut that would say to Pro Tools, put this immediately in touch trim, as opposed to having to do it separately.
Yeah, I just put it in Reid trim. I'll tell you what the one thing that's interesting is a lot of times both of us will get tracks from a producer and there's a rough mix, in the track. In other words, they're faders and plugins or whatever. And, after a while you kind of, other than there's some outlier plugins, usually they're weird effects shit or something that I may want to use or not. But usually EQ and things, people use pretty standard shit usually. So we kind of always have the plugins. But what I'll do is I'll open the session. I'll have Mike open the session. And if there's automation, I'll immediately put the whole session in trim. So now the whole entire session is in trim. And that way I can basically group things and use trim to trim like all the drums down a few dB or the bass or whatever, and leave the automation that's in the session because it may be important. I'll kill vocal automation. I'll kill things like that. But if they've got things where like they're writing cymbal swells and things like that, I'll just leave it in there.
Yeah.
This is ideal.
But and the other thing that I always know when I get a session and the tracks are printed where you can't see the audio because they're printed so low level, that's when I know that the person who did that was running through 8 million dB of multi-channel compression on their mix bus, and it's going to be a bad day. All right. And this is another tough question, guys. So Jake says, how much gain reduction do y'all like to see on a mix bus compressor? And are there some general attack release times you gravitate toward? And I'll answer that by saying, I like to see, I'm not actually sure what I like to see because I never look at the meter, and slow attack, fast release.
Well, I would say that basically what I do is I use the 2500. I always use the same attack, which is 30 milliseconds. That's pretty slow, to be honest with you. And then the release time, I will adjust to tempo. And what I basically do is I have my meters set at 0. I'll just make sure they don't go over 3 dB of compression. Now, the reality is the VU meters are slow, so there's definitely more compression than that. But if it's getting up near 3, then I'll adjust the threshold. And then I just try to set it by tempo. You know, like at the moment, yeah, it's somewhere between, well, it's in the middle of the song. Funny, went right on a sequence.
If you can see that, you probably can't see that.
Yeah.
That's what I got.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and I do the same thing. So sometimes I will use that compressor. I've actually been doing something really weird lately with mine, and that is, hold on, I'll take a picture of it. This is something Richard Dodd turned me on to. So let me take a picture here. Really weird setting. Okay, so, and basically this doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Oh, that's not right. Hold on. Damn it. Well, you know, I'll you know, everything. So Richard told me that for a while he was using this, which really doesn't make any sense.
Interesting. Auto and 10 to 1.
10 to 1. And then the other thing is 10 milliseconds. And then he just makes it so that it doesn't ever move the meter.
Right.
Yeah. Now, the funny thing is it does move the meter. It just barely moves the meter.
Interesting.
Just barely.
Worth a shot.
Huh?
Worth a shot. I'll try it.
Yeah, I mean, if you have something ahead of it, sometimes I will do that if I've got a track that I just want maybe a little more level out of. Like, in other words, I want it to feel like it's maybe a little louder. And then my console, my SSL is modded, so I have a pre-compressor fader over here on my mix bus. So I can adjust it up and down to basically get it to where I want it. But
Somebody
like
just
posted, I'm not using it. So
interesting. Somebody just posted automation is greater than compression. I mean, colorless wise ? Colorless, I guess.
Sure.
Why would you want color? And you know what? I'll answer that question by quoting another engineer. I know that Gary Pachoza, when he does stuff with Alison Krauss, spends a lot of time riding and doesn't use compression very much at all. Because first of all, she's an amazingly controlled singer, and second of all, you know, he wants to be able to control that with rides instead of compression. Me personally, I use compression and limiting because it sounds cool, and if it needs rides, and then I'll ride it.
Yeah, I think your mileage may vary on everything, because one of the things that Gary does, he does these beautiful, like, open acoustic records. What's interesting, he's always coming to me like, man, like, how'd you get that sound on? How'd you do that? I'm like, I'm asking you. You know, I mean, I love what he does, and he's trying to figure out what I'm doing. So, you know, I mean, this is how I asked Reid, like, how are you doing this? Or Hewitt or Andrew or any of these people, like, how's that going on? How are you doing that? Because, you know, we only know what we know, and we only do what we do. And the places like Puremix here is how guys, like, we can pass this information between us. Yeah. I would have never in a million years put a 10 to 1 limiter on my 2 mix in a million years. But a guy like Richard Dodd telling me that's what he used to use when he had to mix on an SSL, that kind of makes me open my ears and say, all right, cool, I'll give it a try.
And if it sounds good, it is good.
And if it sounds good, it is good. Exactly right.
So who's this? Sebastian says, Dear Beards, can you share what kind of saturation you like to use in vocals and drums, and what kind of approach you use into the mix bus, and what is your go-to vocal chain? I have a feeling the first and the third question are kind of the same.
Yeah.
So what's your go-to vocal chain, Vance?
For what? For recording or for mixing?
Both.
Okay. My go-to vocal chain for recording at the moment, if I'm here at Sputnik, right, I'm using a Chandler Red through a Chandler RS-124. No EQ.
Nice.
If I'm elsewhere, let's say like when doing Stapleton, Stapleton is complicated, and maybe I'll go into that, but use a U47, a 1073, and for Chris, we had a 670. But I also used a 4038, exactly in line with the capsule, and using a latch lake stand that keeps it so they don't touch, which is interesting when you have the big, huge magnet. Just like this. So 47 here, 4038 here. Both of them into 1073s, and then both of them, one into one side of the 670, one into the other, unlinked, separate. And that's it, straight to tape. You know, so for me, I tried, that sounds really complicated, and it is, but most of the time it's just a U47 or something 47 like the Peluso 47. That is a really nice mic. I have a couple of those. Or a 67, 1073. If it's a rock and roll vocal, you know, SM7 all day long, 1073, 1176.
Yep.
Now mixing, those were captured separate. Now here's a cool little trick. All right. Here's a fun little trick that most people would never think about, and I didn't until I had to, for another artist, tune something. So let me tell you. One of the things, I think it's maybe, I don't think I brought it up in Tyler Bryant, but maybe I did on the Puremix. But a lot of times I'll record a vocal clean and a vocal dirty. And so most of the time, like what I'll want to do is have those two recorded as a stereo track. But then I just put them in mono. I just pan them together in mono.
Right.
Now, the great part about that is you can process them all sample accurate. So if you need to tune it, right, put them in Melodyne, it'll tune right up. No issues, no double plugins, no double tracks, no phasing. Because otherwise, if you're on two tracks and you try to tune it or edit it or whatever, you got to keep those tracks locked. And when you go to tune them, they won't work. It will not work, right? So I will do that on a stereo track. So all of Chris's stuff, one side was a 47, and the left side was a 4038, and the right side was a 47. And then I brought those back into two channels of the console, and the console was in mono, but I only put the 4038 in Chris's ears because that's all he wants to hear. So, but if you're doing that, here's another one that works strangely well. Use the stereo track on electric bass. One side mic, one side DI.
I do that all the time. Yep. That's fantastic.
That's great.
We share 67s, right? So if I'm cutting a vocal, it is usually one of my, I'm really lucky to have two great U48s. So 90% of the time,
one of my Desert Isle mics.
Yep. A 48 or a 67 through a V76. Yep. And then usually, depending on the artist, if you want some boogie on it, I'll do an LA2A or a 1176. And if you just want it to be like, don't do anything, I have a TubeTech CL1A that I'll just let it barely just not touch. Don't clip anything. And almost all the time, I never use EQ.
I don't ever use EQ in recording.
Yeah. As far as mixing goes for me on vocals, all bets are off, but almost always, actually every single time, it's going through the GML compressor, it's going through a Neve 1080, and it's going through one or more outboard compressors, 1176, LA2, and something like that. Yeah. And usually a Pultec EQ and a retro EQ.
So I'm a little, I know this is going to sound weird, but I'm a little more on the mix side of it. I set up in my session 2 channels or 3, and I'll get to that in a minute. I set up what I call the vocal crush and then the vocal clean. And I actually, most of the time these days, I'm not using any outboard processing console wise for my vocal chain. So I take the vocal, I send it to a bus. That bus goes to a Fatso plugin UAD and the UAD 1176 Blue Stripe, right? Those two go to 31 and 32 on my console, and my console's in mono, no pan. The pan's out. So, like for this track, this Stray Cats, one of the things that I do all the time with the UAD is I use the new 1073 plugin, and I insert that between the, not when I say between, they're physically on my session between the Fatso and the 1176, and I'm doing the deal where I'm adding 35 dB of gain to it, so I get that 1073 distortion.
Crunch.
And then I just have it down in the mix between them. So that's the saturation thing, you know. So, and somebody, Tony popped up with bassist Terror Track. Can you use the little lab on the track? You absolutely can. You just use the dual mono version. You turn it off.
Yep.
Yeah. Bypass.
Yeah, you know, I mean that clipping Mike Pre's clipping transformers. We've been talking about that all day. Somebody asked, like, what happens when you have to do a fix it in the mix kind of thing? I've to fix a track that was recorded poorly, you know, cranking it through a Neve module, either UAD or outboard, can fix a lot of stuff. You know, I have even inserted just transformers, you know, on a vocal to unfuck whatever fucktitude it came with. You know, the biggest key to the whole fix it in the mix thing is just keep trying stuff until you find what works. Don't give up and be like, oh man, there's nothing I can do. There is always something you can do. It might be distortion. It might be running it out through a speaker and blending that in. It might be duplicating the track and limiting the shit out of the bottom track, cranking the high end, flipping the phase and sneaking that in. There's a million different things. Just try anything. Use True Iron. If you don't have outboard transformers, use True Iron. I use True Iron on every single vocal. It's fucking amazing.
Yeah, you know, Devin's got some cool shit going on there.
Yep.
Cool shit.
True Dynamics also, man. It's really, really cool.
Oh yeah, I haven't seen that. You know, for me, like a lot of times people will send tracks, you know, that are fucked. They're usually drum tracks that are fucked, you know, and you just end up either like I reamp my snare all the time. I get this thing I call the snare robot, and you know I will do that a lot to fix snare drum tracks. But you know, I mean, I think we all, you know, I'm not going to lie, we all are going to use samples from time to time. I tend to not use. I tend to want to use my own samples. So, which is strange because that probably means a lot of my records sound the same. Which, you know, okay, fine. I recorded it. I like it. You know, so what? I like it. But they don't usually. You're right. They don't. And sometimes I'll just do. I'll use something like Trigger to just do a little sound spike or like a little tick or a pop. Yep. And then I'll send that to my snare robot, which triggers the pop on the snare or something and fix that. I also will reamp things. One of the coolest pieces of gear that does not get enough credit is the Little Labs PCP. And one of the reasons why it's so cool is that I can just I have one set up. I have one in here that I use all the time in my mix patch, but I have one out in my tracking room, and it's just connected to a floor box. So on my floor box, the last two channels of my floor box, I put mults on my floor box. So they're a female XLR and a male. So they go both directions. They're just a mult. And so I'll put my PCP out on the floor out in the tracking room out there, and I can just come out of Pro Tools, plug into that mic line. It immediately comes up at the right level on the PCP out on the floor. And then I can run it to an amp and I can just immediately reamp. And it's super clean, quiet, super cool, super fast. One side goes to the snare robot. One side goes to a reamp. And if I need to do the bass, I just roll my bass amp over in front of the microphones, and I just reamp the DI. You know, that happened a little bit here. You know, so.
And whoever out, if there's someone on here from Nashville who stole my PCP because mine disappeared and I have no idea where it is, I'd like it back.
I'm sorry, I'll be back.
So Chris Shaw just brought up a great point. You know, he said use a channel strip plugin and scroll through presets. Sheps's the Andrew Sheps thing that Waves did. It has a bunch of presets. They're all labeled something. One of my favorite things to do with that is to put it on something and just like sit there and tick through the presets. Tick, 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 tick. One of them is going to sound good. Like no one said if it says drums, you have to use it on drums. You know, just listen for what? Yeah, Kenneth, I don't know who stole it. It's probably Vance.
It wasn't me.
It's around. It's probably Mitch. It's up in his room. Nah. Yeah, we have no idea. We, you know what? A lot of us in Nashville loan each other gear all the time. And we have no idea where half of the stuff is.
You know what I had to do? You know what I had to do, Reid? We have this whiteboard in the tech shop. If it gets loaned out, I write it. We have to write it down now because, like, there's like a whole bunch of things. Guitar amps. I lost a couple of guitar amps.
Yeah.
You know, and it's nothing. You know, it just is what it is. Yeah.
Yeah, and if Buckley Miller's on here and he thinks that I don't know all the stuff that he has, he is wrong.
Oh, woo, people out.
You know, hey, one more question. So, speaking of live records, how do you handle faking the live feel if you don't get any ambient and crowd mics? And how much malting or gating are you doing and automation, or do you let it bleed and not fix mistakes?
In a live track?
Yeah.
Doing a live record. Well, this one's a good example of that, to be honest with you, because there are many parts of this. I'm gonna give away a little bit here. So you see that? Okay. Trying not to disconnect. See all this? This is all audience. It's all fake audience. These two tracks here running right through here. This is the show ambience.
Green.
Right? The green, the yellow, and the red. These are show ambience, right? This is a crowd loop. It's a big, massive crowd loop, the blue one. And so is the one above it. One of it is like a convention center, just basically people going, you know, banana, banana, mumble, mumble, mumble.
Right.
Then the one above it is CMA Fest a few years back, or it wasn't CMA Fest, it was something that I stole a little bit of audio out of and looped.
Mm-hmm.
It's just it's before the act. And then the top one is just a bunch of the same sort of thing. And basically what it is, if I was to turn it on, let's see here, and listen, one of these, and now this is the bad, God damn it, I fucking hate that. This is bad because you can't really hear it, but basically one of it is just people talking, right? Num, exactly. One of them is this. Again, it's just a different timbre of people chatting. And then the other one is just people cheering. Now, that being said, that is just together in this quiet little thing that's just way low in the mix. Down here is the actual audience, like what was recorded that day. So these are like a couple mics at the front of the stage. Yeah. Right? That's most of it. But there is just a little bit of sweetening here that are, hold on. That is this. And what's funny is I've got a whole bunch of this shit, which is pretty awesome. And this was all, you know, like there's a bunch of boys. These are called Woo Boys. And then these are woo girls. I got woo girls. Everyone in Nashville's heard that woman.
Yep.
And then there's some woman laughing. And I put that in. And then there's more woos. And there's woos and claps. So all these turn into this big mess of audience that makes the track between songs
Someday, baby, I'll see you someday. Look at Mr. Slim Jim on the drums tonight.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So,
I can neither confirm nor deny that crowd samples from Rush's Exit Stage Left have found their way into a record or two.
well, you know what's funny is, back in the day, that those were used a lot.
Yeah.
And, a lot of the same crowd made it in a lot of places in the same, Frampton Comes Alive is not so alive if you've ever heard it. Multi-track. So,
right. What happens in Puremix stays in Puremix.
Exactly. So, but this show, this whole thing was one show they did that was awesome. It's the second time they played live in 25 years. Right? Second time they played live. Then we made a record, this like really quick little record that came out a little while back. They went out and toured for a year. And then there was a bunch of new songs they wanted to insert. Well, of course, different front of house guy, different recordings, different times, different places, completely.
challenge.
Yeah. So yeah, it's been a challenge, but it's great. It's great.
Well, we should probably wrap this up. I would like to mention that Chris Shaw, I'd love to drag you on here, man.
Yeah, man.
Fantastic to get you on
Chris
here.
is too good. He did his own thing. It was too good. It's great.
Yeah, it's true. But if you ever feel like, slumming with the bearded
Well, he's got on with Andrew,
Right.
So he's on with all the big time guys. So maybe if you want to slum down to the lower guys here.
Yeah.
Oh, whoa!
I got asked. Come on, it wasn't me. I'm just here.
Well, what's funny is we're about done. We got to kill this thing, man.
Okay, but I'll come on whenever you guys want.
Dude, we would love to have you.
We'd love to have you.
Yep.
You have to drink during it though. That's the only problem.
No problem. I got a bottle of Heaven's Door waiting for me.
Oh yeah, I've got a bottle of that. It's not too bad.
Not too bad at all.
It's not too bad.
Awesome.
Not too bad. I've told Chris this, but I have the most awkward Bob Dylan meeting story ever. I got this call from Jack White, and he was like, "Hey man, can you come over?" I was like, "Yeah, okay." He's like, "Yeah, just come on over and get everything ready to record." I'm like, "Okay." So Josh and I run over there and we set up, and basically he was bringing Bob by, and he just wanted to if Bob wanted to jam, he wanted to record it, which is cool. But he goes, "Whatever you do, don't make it look like you're about to record us. Just work on something else." So I put a mix up on the second tape machine, and we were working on this mix when they came in, and total bullshit. I shouldn't be telling the story, but and so Bob came in and he had the hood up. But the weird thing was when they came in, next to Jack's studio it's on this really nice road up to what's that park? The one,
Radnor Lake.
Yeah, Radnor Lake. There was a fire, like someone had thrown a cigarette out or something, and so there's fire. So all this smoke started blowing by. So we all ran out of the studio and we stood outside for a little bit, and then Jack sort of introduced me to him. I said hi, and he gave me the really dead fish handshake. And then he came in and he asked me if this was where we did the Wanda Jackson record. He goes, "Is that the piano?" And he went out and he started playing some piano a little bit. And of course, Jack's like watching. Yeah, he's like, I'm like, okay, cool, you know, like, and he's playing, you know, he's playing a little bit. And he goes, "Where's your record store?" And Jack's like, "Oh, it's downtown." He goes, "I want to see that." And that was the end of it. And that's and so, you know, I mean, but it was funny. A fire was involved. How weird is that? A brush, even weirder. You know,
Smoke on the
Weird
tracks.
guy. He's definitely an interesting guy. That's
yeah. I mean, you know, he cold fish, he dead fish me. You know, it was all right. It was just
yeah.
whatever.
All good. All right. Well, you know what? You guys can keep yakking. I actually have to go.
Yeah,
I
you
have
gotta
to
go.
go teach
I
another
got some
class.
scripting to do.
Yeah. So,
Awesome.
so hold a second. If you got to go, Reid, I want to ask Chris because I know the nerdery about the scripting and all is an interesting thing because I'm trying to figure out if there's any way that it would help me in any way. So if you guys want to stay on, I mean, if you want to stay on for a second, not too long.
I'm going to go in about 5 minutes. So
Okay,
Well,
cool.
all I could say is that there's like a whole string of commands that you always have to do all at once, like in order to set something up. Then scripting is awesome, you know.
Right.
Like for example, one thing I did a couple of days ago. One thing I'm always doing is taking dual mono tracks that really should be a stereo track and combining them into a single stereo track in Pro Tools. So that usually involves creating a new audio track, selecting the audio, moving the selection down, pasting it in there, then one by one copying the plugins and the output routing and all of that. And with scripting, you can just hit one button as long as you got those two tracks selected, and it does that all for you in like about 5 seconds.
what are you using? Automator?
No, I'm using this great this thing that Andrew was talking about the other day. This program called SoundFlow. I mean,
Okay.
I literally just got into it about a week ago, like right after I did that thing with Andrew.
Yeah.
I went online.
So now, what was the thing that Andrew was talking about? That little device.
Oh, that's a thing called a Stream Deck. It's like this little box with anywhere between 15 and 32 buttons on it that are backlit and illuminated, and you can assign all those. So you have key commands on the keyboard. That's basically all it is.
Okay, so
yeah, I mean, this is something that Slate was. I mean, you know, the batch stuff is
Batch Commander.
It's kind of like that, but it gets a little nerdier. SoundFlow gets a little nerdier because it's built on JavaScript. And I'm not a programmer, but if you dig through the code a little bit, you can kind of tweak it to do certain things. Like for example, in that combining tracks thing that I just talked to you about, I wrote it in such a way that if you accidentally select one track or 15 or whatever, not exactly two, it'll pop up and say, hey, you should only select 2 tracks before you do this. So it allows you to query certain conditions before it actually executes something. So that's what makes it really pretty ultra geeky and really handy. And the guy who runs it and the guys who run it, the developers, they have a forum on their website and you can just post questions and they get back to you within a day. And they'll actually write the scripts for you if you tell them exactly what it is you want. You know. Right.
So my question to you was the thing that I want. Okay, so I have.
Yeah.
You know, right. Okay, cool. So this is all fine and dandy. It's great, although it looks like it's crashed at the moment because it's an Avid product. It's an Avid product that has to crash. Is one of the things I want is that I want this page. Hold on here. Oh, no. It literally has crashed. Hold on. I want this soft keys page to. I don't want to see the meters. I don't care about the meters. You know what I mean? And I don't care about create. I don't care about edit. I don't care about delete. I don't care about any of that. What I want is I want this whole thing to be memory locations. I don't care about all this. I don't care about all this. I don't care about all this at the top. I want it to be memory locations and a transport. That's all I want on one of these.
There should be a memory locations page on that thing.
Well, there is. There is.
Right.
There is. But every memory locations page has create, edit, delete, cancel, window, and all this shit up here at the top. I don't want any of that. Like, I don't want any of that.
I have a dedicated page on mine that just says, like, I use memory locations to show and hide tracks in Pro Tools.
Right.
So if I want to work on just the drums, I can hit it and it'll just only show the drums. So I have a page and I use the same memory location numbers for on every mix.
This is
So,
part
like,
of your template, right?
yeah,
So-
so like 89 memory location 89 shows me my drums, memory location 90 shows me my bass, 91 shows me my guitars, etc., etc., etc. And I have a dedicated page that just calls up those memory locations. It's
Right.
really easy to do. I mean, I can do it over the phone with you practically if you want.
Right.
You know.
Yeah, I think the thing for me is that I find this to be only slightly useful. And
Mhm.
and you know, Andrew on that stream with you guys
Right.
brought up the deal about how to lock the thing to one app, which is great. I didn't know that.
Yep.
And you know, somebody was giving me shit about my, you know, my fader port or whatever. I
Mhm.
mean, the thing that's dumb about that is why didn't the fader port follow what I highlight here? Well, it doesn't because Huey can't do that.
Yeah, Huey can't do it.
It has to be this, but this doesn't have a fader connected to it unless I go get a artist mix or whatever.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you can get the screen fader. You know.
Yeah, but I mean that screen fader.
Yeah.
You know.
Fuck that.
So, you know.
Yeah, I wanted to jump in. The Stream Deck thing, there's an app that you can get for iOS and Android devices, and this is the same thing that's mirrored on my physical Stream Deck.
Okay.
Right, but it's really
pretty
weird though. With SoundFlow will allow you to use a Stream Deck, but they use their own kind of proprietary connection with it, and it doesn't work on iOS right now. On SoundFlow.
Yeah, they added these SoundFlow, like you have to install a plugin for it, but then you can add these SoundFlow pieces here. So I only have these two on there so far. But
maybe it only works on the iPad. It doesn't work on my phone. But
oh, gotcha.
it's really
Crazy.
finicky.
Yeah.
Well, you know, the kind of thing for me is I have this awkward spot on my console. Hold on. I have this awkward spot on my console where somebody at some point in time thought it'd be a good idea to cut this section of the console out and put a Wacom tablet here.
Right.
So when I got this, it had this tablet thing, right? This is a 4000. There's no need for a fucking tablet in this.
Right.
So what I did was I got a piece of aluminum and bolted in and then put Velcro on it. So this guy lives right here, and it's great. It's perfect for me because I can hang out around the VCAs. I can pick a song and, you know, hit play and it works, right?
Mhm.
All that's great. The problem is that I wish it did more shit. Like, I wish it did less. I wish I could make it do less because I don't care about the faders. I don't care about the meters. I don't care about it.
If you just want soft keys, I mean, I tell you what. If you send me a list, of what it is you want the page to do, I can program it for you and send it to you. If you got any custom keys in there, right now, you'll probably lose.
Yeah, but see, I don't. I think that's the deal. Is that I don't. What I really just want is I want a page of my memory locations without all that create and make shit.
Mm-hmm.
And then
your template ones, right?
Well, not my no, just ones I make. I don't. I'm not really a template.
So you need to send a list, Vance. You need to send a list taped to a really nice bottle of.
Yeah, I can do that. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think the thing is, like, I got into a little bit. I've got an artist mix. I got into that because you talked to me through about editing some of these things.
Mm-hmm.
I got into it a little bit, and I was like, oh yeah, it's really cool. But at the same time, you know, I'd open the next session, and I'd be like, oh shit,
it's all gone. Yeah.
Yeah, it's all gone. So, and often for me, I'm not mixing in the box. I'm mixing on a desk, so everything is, you know,
right.
There are certain things that are good, but
let's bring Chris on.
Yeah.
And talk a little bit of geek shit and a little bit of not geek shit and have some fun maybe a couple of weeks from now.
Absolutely.
I think that's amazing.
Yeah.
You guys can keep going. I got a jet. I got to go teach class.
I got a jet too.
All right, cool. I got a jet.
Cool.
Fine, I'm going to go work. I'm going to go mix this. I'm going to finish this thing.
Yeah, we got to go work. Thank you all for being here.
You
guys, it's always great. We'll see you next week with a special guest. And do we know who that guest is yet?
We do.
Okay. Cool.
Starts with a J.
Ends with a ear.
Yeah.
All right. So next week we'll be hanging out with Jakir King, talking all kinds of really good shit. Please join us. If you have questions, you know our emails. You can find us reach out to Puremix. Go back and watch Chris and Andrew geeking out on all of this.
It's a good one. And definitely watch Andrew and Ken Scott yesterday. And because that's some pretty awesome shit there. So
great.
But,
all right. Thank you all. Thanks, Mark.
Awesome. Thank you guys. And everybody, we're going to be back on tomorrow with Daryl Thorpe. He's going to be deconstructing his mix of Kissing in the Wind by Travis. So that's going to be a good time.
All right.
Cool.
See you guys.
All right, guys. Bye.
Bye.